Hi everyone, this is Track Record's third Facebook Live event. A very exciting day, Ash Wednesday, first day of March, and Track Record Live number 3. We have a great panel today. We're going to be talking about Time, the KALIEF Browder story, which is a documentary series airing tonight on Spike and BET, produced by Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein. And to talk about it, we have Akeem Browder, KALIEF's brother, Faye Mualim Ak from Incarcerated Nation, Gregory Jost from Designing the We, and rapper and activist Chi Ali, and raptivist My Son Linen. And I think we'll get started by getting right to it and hearing a little bit more about what the documentary is about. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. We're doing this docu-series for my brother KALIEF Browder. It's airing today at, as he said, on Spike TV at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and on 11 o'clock on BET. It's just the story that everyone actually has heard about about KALIEF Browder. He's we have the live footage of what actually happened, instead of wondering what happens on Rikers, because most people don't get a chance to actually experience Rikers, which is not an experience that you want to be on. But at the same time, it's something that the world has heard about, and to tell KALIEF's story is just truly an honor for myself, because I mean, as a brother, I didn't get to see him while he was there, except for that some little time that I actually was working there. But it's an opportunity for me to bring KALIEF's story to the world. And actually, since it's going worldwide, it's not just in the United States. What we're doing is just bringing awareness to the fact that solitary confinement and mass incarceration is a real thing in America.
And for those people who may not be familiar with KALIEF's story, could you just remind us?
Yeah, no problem. Actually, KALIEF was accused with an alleged robbery and a third for stealing a backpack, allegedly. And by bringing him to Rikers, when they found out they didn't have any real evidence or any real person to continue this allegation, they turned towards torture, because they realized they didn't want to admit wrongdoing. So we'd rather, as the justice or injustice system, smack you with a huge injustice stick and make you or force you to say or take a plea. But KALIEF stuck to his guns, and he didn't want to take a plea for something that he didn't do.
And he was there for 3 years awaiting trial, right?
3 years.
And part of the issue was also that he couldn't make bail. Or could you remind us what that was? He was there for 3 years?
No, actually, yeah, he had a bail stipulated at $3,000. 900 was the bond. We actually got the 900, but the Department of Probation, the Department of Probation held his bail because he had a joyriding charge prior.
Oh. And then after those 3 years, the charges were dropped and he got out?
Actually, yeah, after 3 years, they realized he wasn't going to take a plea for something he didn't do, and they decided, I mean, realistically, they didn't do anything. No. 1 to 3 is the max. The max is 3 years. They couldn't have given him more. So at that point, they said, well, if we hold him 1 hour more, then we're extremely effed. And so they put it out as like, oh yeah, we're going to let you go. Let me go was the question. Like, what do you mean, let me go? Yeah, we are free. We're not going to let this happen any longer. You had all this time to let me go on before. But anyway.
And the same judge that held KALIEF.
Same, yeah.
Right.
Is now.
But then, so
the same judge is actually now the Bronx DA, which is Darcel Clark, sorry.
But then, so they let him out after the 3 years, and there's a very famous video of him being beat up by the guards, right? But it was a horrible time, obviously, for him. And then after he got out, like, he was scarred by the experience and he was depressed, and he eventually committed suicide, right?
Yeah. So, as you're gonna watch in the episodes to come, so everyone knows that he is no longer with us, and which he would be speaking, and I wouldn't be here. But as we get into it, we're telling the story in series, so that we can target, because there's a lot of problems with our justice system, and with the Department of Corrections, and with the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene. But what we're doing is focusing each episode, 6 different episodes, on, like, the first one, which you guys, if you watch it, it's on KALIEF. It's to humanize. We were talking about a kid, and he's not this young adult that people want to say. No, he's a kid that they brought this. So we have to humanize, because that's how we touch homes. That's how, I mean, he looks just like you and I. So the second part is the system. Although we're all focusing on it, it's each episode is going to dictate what happened through his time and his life period.
Right. And he was 16 when he was arrested, or how old was he?
16.
Because I think we're going to watch a brief clip right now, and one of the most shocking things is that New York is one of the few states, I think it's one out of only 2 states in the country, that tries minors as adults.
And prosecutes them. Prosecutes
As an adult.
adults.
Okay.
And not only that, we're the only state in the United States that doesn't have a speedy trial. And since we don't have a speedy trial, that's what allowed him to stay there for 3 years, and others to stay there even longer.
Right. Cool. So can we watch the clip? So it's a short clip, but I think there's a lot to talk
Yeah.
about there. I think besides the what we talked about earlier about kids 16 and over being tried as adults in New York, there's also the very shocking statistic there about how a little over 30% of teenagers are Black and Hispanic, but the ones who end up in prison are, it's like 72% of teenagers in prison are Black and Hispanic. I thought maybe Gregory could give us a little bit of context. I mean, that clearly speaks to like a systemic issue in New York and maybe around the country. Like, what led to those crazy numbers?
Yeah, that's all by design, right? So we can go back in our nation's history to many points, right? I mean, coming out from how the nation was founded and created on Native American genocide and built on slavery, and all of the forms that it took after, slavery supposedly ended, and look at the way that northern cities were set up and designed and divided and segregated through structural racism, which, the group that I work with, Designing the We have an exhibit called Undesign the Red Line that focuses on redlining as a practice that was created by the federal government in the 1930s as part of the New Deal that specifically devalued neighborhoods based on the presence of people of color living there, with really like strong inflammatory language such as, the detrimental influences in this neighborhood, Negro infiltration, Puerto Rican infiltration, right? So during the Great Migration, with millions of Black folks coming up, fleeing really as refugees, right, from the South, the persecution and the economic oppression, and coming to the promised land of the North, being greeted by these structural conditions that said you can only move into certain neighborhoods, certain blocks, right? And these are neighborhoods, by your very presence, these neighborhoods will be devalued, disinvested in, right? The value of property here will decline. And a whole set of policies and practices layered on top of that are going to add to the level of segregation, but also displacement and trauma, right? And we'll see things like urban renewal as massive federal investment to do things like build highways and public housing and civic centers, right? Those are all going to be placed in red line neighborhoods because those are slum neighborhoods. And displacing, millions of people, cutting up neighborhoods, and starting the cycle of trauma, really. And that's going to lead to a whole series of epidemics as they come in, and the level of, the government type of redlining, which we might call planned shrinkage, government disinvestment, and really like seeing how these structural issues are going to start to create these crises, right, relating to drugs and violence and things that are going to be hyper criminalized in a way that we don't see necessarily today when we see that type of drug activity spreading into white suburbia today, right? That era, it was heavily politicized that all of those kind of big structural issues were going to be dealt with as behavioral and then we're going to blame people for everything that's happening in your neighborhood, and we're going to deal with it by locking people up. And that was really starting in 1968 with the Nixon campaign, turning against blacks and hippies, and saying that, you know, there's a quote by this top Nixon aide, John Ehrlichman, an interview that was
strategy. Right.
Yeah, and was basically said, look, you know, Nixon administration had two enemies, blacks and hippies.
Yep.
Right? And we couldn't criminalize being black or being a hippie, but what we could do was get the public to associate blacks with heroin and hippies with marijuana, criminalize both of them, and then vilify those people night after night on the evening news.
Right.
Totally knowing that it was all made up as a strategy. That's the war on drugs, which on top of that is going to be layered, you know, years later, broken windows policing.
And stop and frisk.
And stop and frisk later. These are all like different manifestations of a long history. And it's really... Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, just a tag team. I mean, when in episode 2, when you actually get to see it, we cover that, where in 2000, for 7 years actually, leading up into 2012, stop and frisk plagued our city. And it's right here here in the city that we sleep in.
That's right. And so if you've seen some of those different visualizations, like things called $1 million blocks, right, where they've done maps in places like New York. I think they did it in Chicago first,
maps,
right?
And then came to New York, yep.
You know, saying that these are the blocks where we're spending millions of dollars to incarcerate people from these neighborhoods, right? Those line up perfectly with the neighborhoods that were redlined in the 1930s. And it was all designed by race intentionally, right? But then we create it as structural. So you don't have to call it race anymore. Now it's by zip code or police precinct.
Yeah. So I think that now we see this series and we see sort of a focus on one family's pain, but it really is an example of what every citizen and the thousands of people go through in Rikers. Like we have 9 to 10,000 people there. It really is built to hold 20 to 30,000, and we pay over 160,000 per person there. So when we see this, when we see this KALIEF and his story and how it impacts one family, but also a huge community. We're talking about an example of, like Akeem said, of thousands of people as well. And so many artists have been there as well. You know?
And I think that there's also the fact that, I mean, for a system that's called like the Department of Corrections, it's doing very little
correctional
to
facilities,
correct
right?
anything, right? And I mean, I think, I don't know if you've been at Rikers, like what's it like there for a grown man? What's it like there for a teenager? Like, I mean, it's definitely not something more that's conducive to.
No, it's not. It's the Ellis Island of the other end of New York, and it's the Ellis Island into brutality. Rikers feeds 62 other counties worth of jails, 70 jails in the state. So basically people stay there and then get processed up to other state facilities. But what it becomes is this sort of pressure chamber, right? Whereas they want to get you to cop out to your charges. So the 3 years that you're spending there is really time waiting for trial. And people end up spending these years and years on end there. But the pressure is so that when you go to court, you're like, look, I'll do anything to get out of Rikers, like just to get out of here, you know? She spent time there waiting for trial too. And I think that that's the title of this film. But also so many people have spent just time there, right? Like times of their lives waiting for trial.
And is that clip we've seen of KALIEF being like beat up by a corrections officer, is that something that's common, right?
That's
I mean, like
every day
he's
there.
Sadly an example
So
of what
Rikers
happens all the
has
time.
rules, but they don't have rules. So it's like when you walk in the door, it becomes a different set of rules, unwritten rules.
And actually, you know, just like we're all saying, this is KALIEF's story, but everyone that's in New York State
is going to relate to it.
Can relate to it. It's not something that just happened to him. It's always happening. It's happening right now as you watch this.
Right.
Everywhere.
And he was also in solitary confinement, right?
And for 1,000 days, which people who actually go into solitary confinement, actually there's a statistic that there's a statistical analysis done that 17% of that population that's in Rikers Island already experienced attempts on suicide, and 17% actually commit suicide.
Wow.
And this statistic is just, people don't learn from statistics, so we couldn't bring this as a statistical docuseries. We had to bring it in a human way where people could relate.
Absolutely, and I imagine especially, I mean, it's considered torture by the UN for anyone, but especially for teenagers. I mean, their brains are still developing. Like, it's probably the worst thing you can do.
And that's the whole thing, right? So inside the cerebral cortex is another sort of part of the brain, which is called the somatosensory cortex. And after 15 days, that is damaged. The United Nations Rapporteur on Torture, which works for the UN, not only says 15 days is torture, but because science proves it, right? Dr. Craig Haney, Stuart Grassi, and Terry Cuppers, the top 3 psychs on the planet, literally described this as a human condition. So no matter who you put in this cell, they're going to deteriorate. And we do it intentionally because we count on those reactions to validate the prison system itself or jail, even construction itself, right?
But even more so is, I feel like, how can you address issues just by putting a person in a room consolidated by himself? You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense. I mean, the mind can't develop without conversation, without reading, without corresponding with other people and interacting with other individuals. So aside from the statistics, it's like common sense would tell you that. And if Mice and I have an issue, and you break us up and put him in a box for 30 days and me in a box for 30 days, what is that solving? What is that Department of Corrections correcting? That's just putting us off in our little rooms to
Time out.
Punishment, yeah.
But
Long
yeah, more or less,
extended
we're
timeout.
probably going to be more upset than come out calm and civil. So yeah, it's and the issues haven't been addressed. So until we address those issues, nothing is being solved. So solitary confinement is just really inhumane, and it's solving nothing.
And it started as an experiment. So what we got to realize is we're experimenting with our human beings. We're experimenting with our children. But just to let you guys know, this isn't like the 13th documentary. We understood what 13th brought to us. It brought information, raw, hard information, which, I mean, if you all saw it, and viewers, it was hard. Yet,
It's true.
after that, it's like,
Truth
what do
hurts.
we do? So what we wanted to do is, we don't want to cliff hang anyone. We wanted to make sure we're putting information out there, but give ideas and thoughts, and then actuality to say, here's what you do after. So what we're doing after every episode is we're holding a round circle talk about it. So we're doing interactive things so that people can actually become involved with what do we do next? That question has always been the thing. Do we go out on the street and march? Do we go out on the street and bring guns and rally? Do we sit home and cry? You know, all of that's valid because you're seeing torture. But then at the end of it, what else can transpire from this?
What's the path that you suggest, or what do you think is the best? What can people do after they watch?
Realistically, everyone experiences hopelessness after coming home from Rikers. Like, whoa, did you really? And or even the family, the families that experience their loved ones going through it. The only thing I can say is, one, yes, we need to start on the federal, state, and local level. We have to focus on, and when you're talking about laws, you're talking about that. But I'm also a believer that, you know what, it was illegal. To do what they did to KALIEF was illegal. How do we make it more illegal? It doesn't really make sense. But we have to try it on every level, get people involved. Because what we got to realize, which I just came from a different panel, we got to realize that we put these people in power. Mm-hmm. We are their bosses. De Blasio works for me. I don't work for him. And so does Cuomo, and so does the president.
And so does the city council, so does legislators.
I think what we're seeing now is that we're humanizing people. I think for so long, when people are incarcerated, we don't see them as human no more. We see them for the crime, and we just say they belong. Most people think that when you're in jail, you're supposed to be in jail.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and my experience showed me that was highly not true. You know, I did 7 years for a crime that I didn't even commit. So understanding that and understanding that I'm not the exception, I'm the rule. A lot of people are in there for either crimes that they didn't commit totally or being sentenced way beyond what they should be sentenced for a crime in itself. So when you start to, I think what KALIEF Browder does is he puts a face to a normal reality that people of color and people of low, funds and income deal with every day. This Rikers is just basically because people have low income. If you have money, you don't really stay on Rikers long. People bail in and out. So the reality that's going through with Rikers is something that's going on every day. And when you look at the KALIEF Browder story, this is not new. And I think what happens is people are humanized and they're looking at KALIEF Browder, they're seeing these tapes and they think that that's really what goes on. before they thought you was just telling them a tale. Like when you come home, like this was going on Rikers Island, nobody really believed that. When you was like, yo, the CEOs just beat you up and they do these things to you, and everybody was like, nah, you doing something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You had to do something wrong, and then there's a kangaroo court in there.
Yeah.
When you say that a man has been in jail, a young boy was in solitary confinement for 1,000 days, and he was only on Rikers Island for 3 years. You just that is insane. Just think about it. That is insane. It's hard to get out. How do you expect to nurture? How do you correct someone when you put them in a position where you make them more angry? When you put this is how they train. They make dogs into fighting dogs by putting them in cages. Because they're angry. So when they get out, so what do you think that you do to a human being that you put in a cage, and his mind is not able to grow, and he just starts to imagine and hallucinate and all these things? You're creating mental issues that men have to deal with for the rest of their lives. Like I only did 60 days in solitary confinement, but those 60 days, they put me in a different mind frame. When I came out of cell, I had to have levels of seclusion. I still have to do that. Like it's 24 hours out of the day. I have to have certain time by myself, or I'm not really able to function. And I know that. You know what I'm saying? I've grown to be better at it. But when you come home from prison, a lot of times people don't even realize what you've been through, and they see you and they look at you like you're crazy. But these things really affect the psyche. You know, they have definite permanent effects.
And I wanted to ask you, Mike, you know, because you speak a lot about incarceration, but somehow we have places as a trophy or some sort of manner. You and Chief speak about this a lot. And suited as you're destined to be there, and it's sort of this trophy if you haven't been there, right?
Yeah, that's how our communities. That's what we have done wrong. Our culture has glorified negativity, and Rikers Island, the culture is violence on Rikers Island. So this is where you supposedly get your stripes. You know, people come home and misinform. You know, these people go to prison, they come home and misinform our youth, and they make them feel like you're not quote unquote a man unless you're able to survive on Rikers Island, or you have some levels of stripes on Rikers Island. And this is the madness that we've taught each other, and the madness that we're dealing with. And the whole institute itself has created that. You know, the whole situation itself has created. So it's like a revolving door. We continue. The kids go to jail. The father go to jail. Like my father was on Rikers Island, and I went to Rikers.
Yes,
you know, it just continues on, and somehow we have to break the cycle, especially when we're incarcerating our youth. We're not even giving the youth the opportunity to flourish.
You know, Jay-Z actually, when we interviewed him, I'm sorry, I cut you off my phone.
No, but that's the truth. We're not giving the youth is a mind. Your kid, if you don't watch your 4-year-old, he'll jump off the roof. They'll walk because they don't know, and then as they grow older, they learn more. So a 16 is still learning the world. They're still making mistakes.
Yeah.
And if you realize that minorities are the one to be incarcerated at this rate, at this age, and then you create in their mind that this is what their destiny is. Because now it's normal. This is the normalcy.
Yeah.
This is what's going on in our community. So when they say, oh, we're bad, no, this is what we've been trained to believe is our norm and is our destiny.
Yeah, and like Mike says, you know, it's normalized here, but the rest of the greater world doesn't see it. So seeing this story sort of expounds upon that. A few years ago, we did a report. I was in the White House, and they were like, well, you know, is there racial disparity in Rikers? And automatically, I just felt like they should have known that.
Exactly.
I'm like, well, you don't know that? But, you know, as a matter of fact, let's do a report. And we brought in the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and we did this huge report on racial disparity of just youth in Rikers as well. And I realized that the world doesn't really know this, right? We know it because so many people in our world, millions of people have been there. Like 100,000 people per year cycle through Rikers. At least 70,000 are prosecuted, right? I mean, 70,000 people per year come through the doors through there.
21,000.
And it's literally a system where you're spit out late at night. They're just dropped off, given a Metro card, no resources. Actually, Akeem and his organization was only the one group who started to going out interviewing people, but also giving them resources. Because if we don't step up and be the voice for this greater problem, no one is, right? Like, look how many stars and how many musicians have been Rikers, but no one talks about it.
Well, I was going to say, I think what's great about this documentary, like shedding light on this, is also having Jay-Z behind it to kind of amplify the message. And you were just going to mention something that he said, and I just wanted to ask you how he got involved and what it's been like working with him.
I mean, when KALIEF came home, actually, Jay-Z sought him out because, I mean, not just for the fact that the New Yorker did the story about it, but Mark Lamont Hill told the next story, and then so on and so forth. But then Jay had Shaka, his right hand. She ended up seeking out KALIEF through the attorney Paul Prestia. He ended up taking him, meeting him, talking with him, helping out where he could. But then everyone then started wanting to get behind it because we need a perpetuating voice.
Mm-hmm.
When you have that, it's like, okay, now it's amplified times 80.
Right. Because
Outside of the U.S., they heard the story and had us go speak out there. Australia, Germany. The 60 Minutes out there, they were appalled by how does this happen, and yet we're supposed to follow your lead. You're America and New York, not even just like Alabama or Illinois, New York. So when he speaks and it gets the word out, but it's then left with us. It's then left with the people because, he's going to move on to another project. He has to. It's his business. But then what? He already put the word out. It's like, okay, you guys now take the power into your own hands.
Mm-hmm. So it's a great chance
I was going to say, I think it's important that we get across that we're not just bitter ex-cons and just ranting and raving and think it should just be anarchy, because I guess our adversaries would argue that that's what we're saying, and I don't think we're saying that by any means. I think it's about implementing better systems to police the police, real systems to police the police.
Accountability.
Yeah, it has to be accountability, and just the blue water silence. It's just got to be it. If it's gonna really be about justice, then that can't be it. You understand what I mean? And on top of policing the police, we have to come together and find out better ways to correct the youths, other than putting them in a box. We have to. That's what the head of corrections needs to be doing. That other than beating our asses, they need to be having sessions with these COs so they can find different ways to get through to us. I know a lot of the kids is hard, and it's not easy, and we can be arrogant, disrespectful, and what have you. However, y'all jumping him and beating his ass and putting him in a box,
it's not gonna
that's
happen.
not the answer. That's you stooping to his level when you supposed to be the law.
Yeah. Being a father, my son is 19 years old. So the way that I'm able to deal with him now and the way I was able to deal with him 3 years ago is completely different.
Yeah.
His level of understanding is he has matured so much in just those 3 years. And his level of understanding mistakes and things that he would have done then, he knows a lot better now.
That's cool.
He's made mistakes and he's able to, and he will be very successful. Now, had he got into this system, that would not have been the reality, because his mind would have been shaped different. When you go to Rikers Island, there is a culture that shapes the mind, and cultures dictate who you are. Anybody tell you something different, we dress the way we dress because it's what we're surrounded by. If you go to different countries, you see different rituals and different cultures. Rikers Island has a culture, and it creates a culture. It creates a mind state, especially if you're very young. You're formed into that mind state. It's a warrior. You have a warrior's mentality, and then you start to adapt that and then it becomes a norm. And then when you get in society, you bring that mentality into society, and you're not even comfortable in society anymore. So you want to be in that realm because you gain some level of credibility and some level of stature. So most people that go to jail young, they come out here and don't even last months.
Yeah, it actually has a contradictory, and it's funny how you said that, like a conflicting form of rules, right? So 16-year-old kids across the street from Rikers can't work more than 4 hours a day, can't even talk back to an officer, or even literally would be out after 8 o'clock. But across the other side of the street, they're fully adults. They're supposed to be responsible for everything that they know legally, medically is wrong with them, and more so in charge of themselves as adults. So they're talked to, they're treated like adults. When that's a false sense of maturity, when they are let out at 12 o'clock the next night or a month or a year later, they're totally disenfranchised and can't even get an apartment on their own. And they're young adults who end up aging out of foster care, and sometimes
just putting someone, especially at that age, but anyone, when you put someone in 100% crime rate neighborhood, which is what
you're going to end up going back to.
But that's what prison is.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is convicted, so it's a 100% crime rate area you live in, and then you're expecting that person to get better.
Yeah.
I think that's insane. I think if you put me in a jail with nothing but chefs, I think if I did 10 years,
I might
know
become a
those
cook or
some
something.
sautés. You know, but if you put me with the worst that the state has to offer, how can I truly become a better person?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll tell you later.
Well, it's clearly not the intention.
Cool.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think to wrap up, if we could watch the trailer.
Yeah,
I think that'd
yeah.
be great if you still have it up
Yeah.
there as well. Oh, you don't have it anymore. And also I was curious to get Gregory's take on what Design the We is doing to prevent to change that pipeline into the prison from those neighborhoods.
Well, there's many people working on a lot of different efforts, but I think one thing that we think is so important is for people to understand like how we got into this. And I think, everything that y'all are speaking to right now, right, is really talking about trauma and unaddressed trauma, right, and how that builds off itself. And the brain science is saying that too, like it'll get passed down to your kids and your grandchildren. And if we don't create some of the different spaces and institutions and places that people can actually like understand that history and accept that trauma is actually there and real, then we're not going to be able to really move out of it.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about, so what's the alternative and how are we going to create this and what's the different type of space that people need to go into, we need to have a process that acknowledges that and has people saying like, well, so what are the ways, we like to think about it in terms of investment, right? These are neighborhoods that have been historically disinvested in, but specifically because of the people that have lived there.
Purposely.
Right.
Yeah.
And intentionally, right? To say that, okay, people of color living in this neighborhood, this is going to be disinvested in. When we reinvest back into, it's not just about reinvesting back into neighborhoods, building affordable housing and saying that now we've got, we're going to put this new thing here, but that's not actually for you, right? So how do we create ways that we can actually invest in people that have been historically disenfranchised, devalued, redlined, right? And say that, like, so what are the opportunities to, and a lot of that, the work that we've been doing with young people from some of the same neighborhoods that KALIEF's from, right, in the Bronx, is to say, like, okay, so we've got a vacant property in your neighborhood. So let's look at this at your neighborhood. How did your neighborhood get the way that it is? And have the young people start to understand that history and have them lead the process of saying, well, what do we want to do here? And kind of birth some of these different ideas of like, oh, this is going to be a community hub that like, okay, so I'm thinking, yeah, I want to go to college. And some of the kids are exactly this. Yeah. They're either at Bronx Community College like KALIEF was, right? Or they're thinking about going to college, but they're scared off by, I'm going to get into a lot of debt and I'm not guaranteed a job. What's my path? What's my path? And how do we have them start to create the different opportunities themselves from the very beginning of saying, so they're looking at like, oh, we want to create a makerspace.
Yep. What's the website?
Right. So our website's designingthewe.com.
Designingthewe.com. Also, NYC Justice League.
NYC Justice League. You can go to our website also. We deal with, we're currently on to stop the militarization of police and also to raise the age issue. We just finished doing a big panel on that. So
and also the Women's March, a huge march and a huge international organization of different women working together and supported, of course, by my son.
Definitely supporting.
Yeah.
And we definitely have so many across New York State. We have a lot of coalitions that come together. I mean, even outside of the U.S., we just have to learn how to unify. Because we, as a black and brown skin community, we're definitely the disenfranchised, but we are also the least amount of people to get. I mean, we're not the minority. We're the majority.
Exactly.
But we don't stick together. So that's the talk that we're actually trying to have after every episode. How do we start connecting us together? Because we're more powerful than what we say we are.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get involved with Rikers, Joe's Action Coalition,
Just
there's also
Leadership.
Just Leadership, Close Rikers. We want to be able to get into people to come out to Board of Corrections hearings. These are free for the public. They can also come out and speak.
And we're also doing the
Incarceratednation.org.
KALIEF law.
Yep.
The KALIEF law is actually stipulated so we could stop the games because we have no speedy trial. So what I did was I'm pushing forward the KALIEF law so that we can have a speedy trial in New York. And actually it got passed on the Assembly side. So now, as it's in the Senate, we need the people to come out and start having their voice heard.
Same thing on Raise the Age, so we passed that as well, moving forward, but not in the Senate, waiting for that. So we still need the people's voice, and also the people can also change this, right? One of the things, 6 p.m. tonight, 167th Andrew Freeman Home. You could also see the Undesign and We workshop, but also we have the commission hearing, the Independent Lippman's Commission on Rikers Island.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It's always an interesting conversation. And I think we'll end with the trailer for the series, which premieres tonight on Spike and BET.
10 p.m. Yep, 11 o'clock on BET.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Today is May 15th, 2010. The time is now about 7:47 in the evening.
I just needed to get my story out.
And you are Mr. KALIEF Browder, is that correct?
Yes.
I was going home from a party.
911 operator 1719, where's emergency?
Two male black guys, they took my brother book bag.
There was a guy saying that I robbed him. They said, we're gonna take you to the precinct.
Did you rob somebody in the beginning part of May, Mr.
No.
Browder?
No.
The time is now 10 to 8. This interview is concluded.
They said, most likely we're gonna let you go home.
Rikers. Most violent jails in the country.
All right. Look what he's doing. Stop resisting.
But then I never went home.
KALIEF is my son. I know what he went through. I went through a lot with him.
I felt like I was done wrong. I felt like something needed to be done about this. If I just say that I did it, nothing's gonna be done about it. I didn't do it. No justice is served. Nobody hears nothing at all. I had to fight. You want me to walk away like it's okay? It's not okay. I lost my childhood. I lost my happiness.
They've destroyed my life, my family's life.
911 emergency. Ma'am?
This is supposed to be the greatest city in the world. And we're supposed to trust in this justice system. Where's the justice?